The question used to be theoretical. What happens to human work, human meaning, and human identity when machines can do what humans do? Faster, cheaper, and without complaint. It was the kind of question debated in academic papers and science fiction, comfortable in its distance from the actual present. That distance is gone. The systems being built right now are not the robotic automation of the last industrial revolution, displacing physical labor while leaving cognitive work untouched. These systems are moving directly into the territory that humans believed was uniquely theirs. Writing, analysis, diagnosis, legal reasoning, creative production, emotional support, strategic planning, and the response to this, in most public discourse, in most institutions, in most individual lives, is one of two things. Either anxious denial, insisting that the threat is overstated and that things will work out as they always have, or passive surrender, the assumption that the human role is simply contracting and that there is nothing to do but adapt to an increasingly diminished place in a world run by systems more capable than we are. Both responses miss something fundamental. The question is not whether technology will transform the human role. It will, it already is. The question is what the human role actually is, at its most essential, at its most irreducible, and whether that role is threatened by what is coming or whether it is, in fact, more important now than it has ever been. Part 1. What machines actually do. To understand what humans are for in a tech-dominated future, you first have to be precise about what machines are actually doing, because the public understanding of this is consistently either overinflated or underinformed. What current AI systems do at their most fundamental level is pattern recognition and pattern completion at extraordinary scale. They process vast amounts of existing human output, text, images, data, decisions, identify the statistical patterns within it, and generate new outputs that fit those patterns with remarkable coherence and sophistication. This is genuinely extraordinary. It produces outputs that, in many domains, are indistinguishable from human-generated work at the surface level. It performs tasks that previously required years of human expertise. It operates at speeds and scales that no human cognitive effort can approach. But here is what it does not do, and what no increase in scale or sophistication has yet bridged. It does not understand what it produces. It has no perspective on the patterns it completes. It does not care about the outputs it generates, not in the sense of having genuine investment in their meaning, their consequences, or their truth. It cannot ask why a question matters before answering it. It cannot choose not to answer because the question itself is wrong. It cannot bring genuine presence to an interaction because presence requires a subject, and computation, however sophisticated, does not produce subjectivity. This is not a temporary limitation. It is a structural feature of what computation is. As we explored in the conversation about consciousness and code, the simulation of understanding is not understanding. The generation of outputs indistinguishable from care is not care. And the things that require genuine understanding, genuine care, genuine subjectivity, those are not being replaced. They are becoming the only things that cannot be. Part 2. What gets more valuable as automation increases. There is a reliable historical pattern in technological displacement that most people understand intellectually, but fail to apply correctly to the present moment. When a technology automates a function, the economic and human value does not disappear from that domain. It migrates upward toward the aspects of the domain that the technology cannot reach. Automation of physical labor increased the value of cognitive work. Automation of routine cognitive work increases the value of what sits above routine cognition. The question is what sits above routine cognition, and the answer is not what most people assume. It is not more complex cognition. More complex pattern recognition and completion is exactly what AI systems are moving into most aggressively. The complexity of the cognitive task is not the relevant variable. What sits above cognition, What becomes irreplaceable precisely because it cannot be automated is the human capacity for genuine meaning-making. Not the generation of meaning-shaped outputs, the actual experience of meaning, the felt, subjective, first-person investment in why something matters, who it serves, what values it expresses, what kind of future it is building toward. A machine can generate a strategy. It cannot genuinely care whether the strategy is worth pursuing. A machine can produce content. It cannot actually mean what it says. A machine can optimize a system. It cannot hold the question of whether the system should exist in the first place. These are not soft skills or secondary concerns. In a world flooded with technically proficient outputs generated without genuine meaning, they are the scarcest and most valuable things available. Part 3, the specifically human capacities that remain. There are capacities that are not just currently difficult to automate. They are structurally impossible to automate because they require the presence of a subject, genuine ethical judgment, not the application of ethical rules, which can be systematized, but the capacity to navigate genuinely novel moral situations where the rules conflict, where the stakes are unclear, and where what is required is not calculation, but wisdom. Wisdom is not a function of pattern recognition. It is the integration of knowledge, experience, and genuine care into a judgment that could not have been reached algorithmically. Authentic human connection, the specific quality of being known and seen by another consciousness, the comfort available from genuine presence, the irreplaceable experience of being met by a person who actually inhabits the interaction, whose attention is real, whose care is genuine, whose response arises from their actual inner life rather than from the completion of a pattern. This cannot be simulated in the way that matters, because what makes it matter is precisely the subjectivity behind it. Creative vision with genuine stakes, not the production of creative outputs, which machines do with increasing facility, but the human capacity to create from a position of genuine risk, to make something that exposes the maker, to produce work that arises from the specific texture of a particular human life, its wounds, its longings, its specific angle on the world, and that carries that specificity as its most irreplaceable quality. The capacity to question the frame, to step outside the system being optimized and ask whether the optimization itself is pointing in the right direction. Machines optimize within given parameters. They cannot question whether the parameters are the right ones. That requires a perspective that stands outside the system, which requires consciousness, which requires a human. Part 4, the choice this moment requires. The challenge of a tech-dominated future is not primarily technological. It is psychological and cultural. It is the challenge of resisting two powerful pulls that both lead to the same outcome: the effective abdication of genuine human agency in a world where the tools for replacing that agency become increasingly available and increasingly persuasive. The first pull is toward pure efficiency, the optimization of every human function, including the functions of meaning-making, connection, and judgment, through technological augmentation until the human component becomes thinner and thinner and the outputs become indistinguishable from those generated without human presence at all. The second pull is toward passivity, the assumption that the human role in a tech-dominated world is to consume what the systems produce, to benefit from the efficiency gains, to find meaning in leisure while the systems handle the work. This is the most comfortable version of displacement and the most corrosive, because meaning is not something that survives consumption. It is something that requires creation, genuine, effortful, personally risky creation to remain alive. The choice this moment requires is the deliberate countercultural decision to develop and deploy the capacities that cannot be automated. Not because they are economically advantageous, though they increasingly will be, but because they are the capacities that constitute genuine human life. The cultivation of genuine wisdom, rather than the performance of it. The maintenance of authentic human relationships rather than their simulation. The creation of work that actually means something to the person creating it. the willingness to ask the questions that the optimized system is structurally unable to ask. These are not retreats from modernity. They are the most forward-looking investments available in a world where everything else is being automated. The future is not arriving as science fiction imagined it. It is not the dramatic rupture of a world suddenly replaced. It is a gradual, accelerating transformation of what is valuable, what is scarce, and what constitutes genuine human contribution. And in that transformation, the human role is not contracting, it is clarifying. Every function that can be automated is being stripped away, not to diminish what humans are, but to reveal what humans are when everything else is removed. The administrative, the routine, the technically competent but meaningless, all of it falling away to expose what was always underneath, the irreducible human core, the subject who experiences, the consciousness that cares, the being for whom things actually matter. That is not threatened by technology. It is what technology cannot touch, and it is more needed, more scarce, more valuable, more structurally essential to a functional human world than it has ever been. The question is not whether there is a role for humans in a tech-dominated future. The question is whether humans will choose to be fully human enough to fill it. If this reframed how you think about your place in a world being transformed by technology, share it. Someone you know is quietly wondering if they're becoming obsolete. This might be the thing that shows them what is actually becoming more valuable. See you in the next one.